I really enjoyed the presentation. I thought it was really timely for what I wanted to talk about or what we wanted to talk about with Delphix. And that's, as we are moving towards AI and everybody's talking about what we're going to do with AI, I think it's important that you start with a good base, and that base is securing your data, right? How am I going to make sure that what I develop is not using my customers' information, not using any kind of names or social security numbers, but I'm still getting value out of it, right? I want to build my models with accurate data, which is often our production data sets. So let me tell you first a little bit about Perforce and Delphix. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Delphix, which is what I'll talk about today, but we are owned by Perforce. Perforce owns other products you might be familiar with, like Puppet for configuration management on the infrastructure side, BlazeMeter and Perfecto on the testing side. And then when Perforce started, it was more of an IP management tool when they first started, and we've rebranded that to P4. So just a little bit about the company as a whole. Now kind of into why we're here. So what's going on? None of this is new to any of us, right? We're asked now to develop faster, right? Especially with AI generating code, we're iterating a lot faster. But not only are we iterating a lot faster, people are asking us to do it cheaper. When we think about what we're doing with AI, we're actually creating more data. We're not getting rid of data. We're actually finding out the data that we thought wasn't useful to us actually is. Now our data sets are growing, so it's costing more. So how can I iterate faster, use less storage, especially when I'm trying to look at my cloud costs, and then still make sure it's 100% secure, right? I want to be responsible in my AI practice. What Delphix is it's a data platform that does two things. The first is we ingest in your production data sets, and we use that to provision lightweight copies for development, test, model training. Now you have access to your production data sets to make sure that when you're doing this work, you're getting accurate outcomes. On top of that, if I can tell you that I can give you your production data sets in non-prod, that's great, unless I'm giving you your customers' information. Now, we're not locking down non-production in the same way that we lock down our production environment, so we might encrypt data at rest, and that's great, but that's not keeping people from running SQL queries and having access to your information, or possibly having AI hallucinate and spit out your customer information, and now you're responsible for that. So when we talk about AI and ML, we're talking about a data access crisis. And what I mean by that is that although I want to iterate fast, we all have information security teams, CISOs, barriers that are saying, hey, listen, this is all sensitive information. You want this environment. Maybe you want to move it to the cloud, or you just want to copy in non-production. You're going to have to jump through some hoops to make sure that that's allowed. That often takes time. We mentioned GDPR in the earlier presentation. There's more rules and regulations every day about who can see and who can access your environment. So even though you want to move fast, and we all want to move fast, there's all of these steps or processes in the way that are keeping us from doing that, and that costs actual money. This is just a study that we did, so saying that just to get access or to the data itself could be 6 months. And then once you have access, how are you going to secure it? Are you sampling it? Are you manually writing scripts? That takes additional time, not to mention the time it takes to provision the environments to begin with. Delphix can help you with all 4 of these, but today we're going to talk about the top 2 around the data access and the securing your data. So why does it take so long? I hit on this. Because your data has sensitive information. It's got your customers' names, addresses, possibly social security numbers, all information that's regulated by law that you can't put out and you can't make available to people that don't actually need to see it. Those are your developers, your testers, maybe third parties that you're working with that you're sending your data to. But you need that data, right? You need it so that you can train and develop accurate models. So with Delphix, we can cut down that time that you saw before, the months, into masking and hours, into data access being immediate. When we talk about data delivery, and if you'd like to talk about that, we certainly can. After this, we can take that down to minutes instead of days and hours. We can give you self-service for environments to have them available to yourself on demand, cutting down the cost and the barrier to entry significantly. So the data challenge, right? We've built entire industries around privacy and getting around having access to our customers' secure information. One of those things that we've done is we've said, hey, listen, maybe if I just get a smaller data set, then I put less of my customers' data at risk. It's great, but it's not really an accurate representation of what you're working with. Okay, that's fine. I realize I need to mask this data, but if I'm masking the data manually, so I've got somebody that's super smart and they're like, hey, I got this. I can write a script, I'll mask the data, I'll cleanse it, and now we can work with that. Right, except now you've got one person that has the script, that has to do the upkeep, and they're probably not taking things into consideration like referential integrity. Do I have more than one system that I'm looking to mask? And maybe Susan exists in 3 or 4 of them, but Susan becomes Bob one place and Jeff in another, right? It's not scalable. So oftentimes, so that they get the benefits for machine learning and AI, having their actual data, their actual industry information, they look to do synthetic data. And Delphix, until recently, we spent all of our time talking about masking and using production data sets and not having value in synthetic data. I will tell you that there is masked data, masked copies of your production data set, way better than synthetic data for reasons like, data anomalies that only exist in production. We know you roll something out into production, it's got a bug, it gives you some wonky data. You're never gonna go, oh, I need to build synthetic data for this really, obscure use case that I don't even know exists in production, right? So synthetic data is gonna give you what you already know, while the mass data itself is gonna give you what you actually have. Now, I say up until recently, we used to say this, but we are building a tool that'll be GA next month to create synthetic data, not as a replacement for your production data sets, but as an augmentation, right? If there are new features that are not adequately represented in your production environment, but you want to make sure that it is available for your model generation, for your development, for your testing, we can now give you that data on top of the production data sets as well, so that you have a full outlook to do the work against. Now, we talk about masked data. Some people say, like, listen, that's great that the data is masked, but it might skew what I'm interested in. It's not really the case. Usually what we're masking is data that's not being skewed. It's not that we actually care about it in the first place. Right? You don't need to know that Susan DiFranco did something. You just need to know that I actually did it. You need to know about what I did from an account perspective, who I bought something from, what the actual transaction is, not my name, not my social security number. No problem. Use the tool, go ahead, mask it, hand that over, let people train these models and work against the actual production data sets, because that's really what's important to you, are the transactions themselves, and maybe not my personal demographic. If that is important to you, maybe you wanted to know, the states that somebody lived in or something along those lines. No problem. You don't have to mask a state. You don't even have to mask, maybe my area code, as long as the combination of what you're masking is not personally identifiable, then you're fine, right? So we're still giving you the information that you need, but not exposing you. So again, you're now, to the same point, you're compliant with the most restrictive of rules and regulations. You're not exposing your customers' information. We used to say, like, you don't want to be on the cover of a newspaper, right? You don't want to be on the news that somebody stole your information. But then once we started asking people and talking to people about that, it wasn't that they were as concerned about as they were about bringing the auditors into their company, right? When you bring the auditors in, that's money, that's time that you're not actually spending doing development work. If you end up on the front page, and I laugh and I joke and I use Target as an example, right? Target, they had a huge data breach, but I'm still there at least 4 times a week, right? It didn't stop my shopping habits, but it did cost them some time and some development, bringing auditors in to try and remediate and determine the source of the data breach. So, when you're starting to think about the AI journey and the machine learning journey and bringing all of this data to iterate at speed, it is imperative that you start with, how am I going to secure this data? How am I going to build something that can scale so that as I'm iterating, I'm doing it in a secure fashion? So just in a summation of the Delphix solution, what are we bringing? We're bringing you the ability to give production data sets to your developers and testers, or to, it might be reporting teams, it could be third parties, anybody that's building any kind of AI, machine learning in minutes, not days, weeks. Again, we can talk about this outside. I can give you a 750 terabyte copy of your production database in 4 minutes, 5 minutes maybe, and it could be just a few gigs in space. So now people can have their own copies to iterate against. It's going to be 100% compliant, so everything is going to be masked. We'll tell you where all of your sensitive data is. You don't have to know. Maybe you have a column called column 1, but it's actually credit card information. We'll tell you that. We'll report that back to you. We're also going to give you the ability to build in some business logic. So if you have an open date and a close date, or a date of birth and a date of death, right, you might want to mask both of them, but you still need to be aware that somebody needs to be born before they die. You need to open something before you close something. All of that logic can be built into our user interface. So all compliant, business logic maintained, referential integrity, Susan everywhere. So now your developers and testers, your data analysts, nobody's complaining that they don't have production data, because that's the first thing that comes. I can't do my job without the actual production data, because we are giving them valuable, fictitious, so not realistic data, but still usable for them in the end. And then this last is just a real world use case for a customer of ours. They had financial Social Security numbers in their data, right? It's hit months, half a year for them to get access or approval before Delphix to the data, right? This was costing them money. They were unhappy with the way things were going. They're trying to manually sample a data. I refer to myself as a recovering DBA. I was an Oracle DBA for a few decades. People that aren't DBAs don't understand the complexity behind relationships within a database, either the ones that are defined or managed by the application team. So people tend to think, oh, all you got to do is X, and it's just not that simple. With Delphix, they were able to mask the Oracle database in 2 hours. They were able to take the Databricks application they were using and mask it. Now everything had the referential integrity. They were able to move forward with their use case, and it saves them now $2.3 million per project. And that's it.